So I want to play, I want to muse with you, meaning I want to have you think with me this suffering that we're going to go through and examine. I want to look at it from the macrocosm. For those of you who may not be familiar with physics and the language of it, the macrocosm is the bigness of things. But our goal is to take this understanding of the bigness of things and break it down into the microcosmic expression of the bigness. In other words, we're going to eat it one bite at a time. We're going to chop it up one bite at a time so that we can begin to see root cause analysis. We're going to begin to look at what is the root of all of this. What is ultimately the root of this macro of suffering that we're going to begin to deal with today? Broken children and abuse and so forth. And for those of you who know our lifestyle, Hetty and I, people wonder, how do you do business? You're always alone up on a roof somewhere, in a hill somewhere, alone and listening and examining and exploring the mind of God. And so I want to begin there with you. And I'd like for you to begin to put up the screen on the line, the Kingdom Culture Revolution. I want to begin to talk about that for a moment. And if you look upon the screen, I don't know, this one seems to be a little bit darker than that one, so you'll see me spending most of my time looking in this direction. I want you to understand that this kingdom culture revolution is for the souls of our children, but we all were children, so the battle is for your soul. Let's start with the macro. What is this about? There's a warfare going on. Pastors, you begin to teach it, and every pastor teach this war between darkness and light. And if you're not careful, you'll forget what Jesus says, that it's not, we don't war against Ephesians 6, we don't war against flesh and blood, but it's those principalities, those invisible forces in high places. Now, I'm not preaching. I want you to muse with me now. So taste what we're talking about. This country in the news media would make this war about black and white, women, men. And so there's battles of anger and frustration, man with woman, woman against man, black against white, Hispanic against black, white, whatever there may be. And so we're being divided by a force that if we're not careful who we are and remember who we are, we'll be caught up in this physical battle, forgetting the root of this battle, and find ourselves captured by anger and bitterness. So let's begin to explore what we will call, without putting physical attributes to the root of our problem, we will call it the conqueror. The conqueror. The conqueror. And the first thing that I would have you explore with me as we talk about this conqueror, how this conqueror comes to be. And I would have you explore the idea of how the environment shapes the conqueror. The environment begins to shape how we think, how we behave, how we become social creatures. And when you think of the ice, we think of Europe, Europeans, and those that come in, the Vikings that have grown up in cold ice weather. And if you look at what drives them for survival, think survival now, this human biological condition, and psychological condition, sociological condition. And you must understand my background is in behavioral science, so I don't look at things just as they are in the physical. I begin to look at the social impact, the psychological impact. And if you look at that Those who grew up in coal country, they have to struggle to survive. They have to unite to survive. People groups have to unite. Keep that word in mind. Unite for survival. And when you think about the sand, there's less struggle for survival because they can occasionally find food and through being Bedouins and wandering through the desert, and occasionally with some struggle find food. But the sun people, the sun culture, those are those social groups of sun culture. The abundance is everywhere. You can lay on your back and get hit in the head by a falling banana, coconut. You can scratch on the ground and you can find a cassava. And so there's very little need for coming together socially to survive, whereas the ice people, in order to conquer those animals, to take their skin for fur and to have their meat for nutrition, they had to come together, unite together, be united as a people group, as a social group in order to survive. And the nature of man is to conquer and rule, and so therefore it's the nature of man to explore new territories. And you can imagine, just dream with me, the ice people that have grown to the capacity to now where they need more resources for survival, now following river and ocean routes to new territory to conquer, to survive. And now they have become a united social group over generations and years learning to work together for survival. And now they meet a people of sun that has very little need to come together, very little need historically to work together with other people for survival. They can have their own little group, their own little clan, their own little nation. And so they now become within a continent. Remember, nations is not a plot of land, it's the continent. There would be on this landmass of continent. As you can imagine, in Africa and many nations, that there are many cultures within one continent, many different languages. If those of you like Hattie and I that have traveled the world, you would know that there are many different languages, many different cultures in Africa. And can you imagine if my children had reproduced and their children reproduced? I don't need anything but me, my, and I, and my own little gang to form a society. I don't need you. But this cold people, those of ice, had to join with other clans and other communities. And you can imagine how easy it might be if there was a history of working together, coming together in order to become victorious over the elements for survival. How easy it might be to now come into a land where people were independent, had no history of coming together because there was no need for survival to come together to capture them and become their conqueror. So easy because it was only them. So easy because they weren't really trained and needful of war to survive, and the people that needed to war to survive, to eat, killing animals and things much larger than themselves. I'm just musing with you now. Why have we been, the people of the sun, been so easily and habitually captured by the conqueror? And so one of the things I want us to begin to do is march down understand the way of a conqueror. We'll define as conqueror is one who wins a country in war, subdues or subjugates a people. Now, we're going to turn this back. Now, you're going to have to work with me. This is kind of like a movie series. So you can't just go to sleep and wake up and come back and tune in. I need you to stay with me. And so this conqueror has learned to now do war, to live, to survive by subduing other people, this conqueror. So let's not put color, let's not put race. This is what the enemy would have us do, because for those of you that would say a people group, no, it's not a people group. It's a human group and a spirit within human groups to conquer. And so the conqueror has now captured. Now let's look at the definition, the state of a conqueror. Conqueror defines the environment or the nationality. Now let's look at that for a moment. For those of you who understand the plight of Native Americans, they once lived in plots of land, we'll say, but now the conqueror comes and they're put on reservations. That becomes their nationality. That becomes their nationality. In other words, belonging to a particular nation, having a common tradition or language. A plot of land we'll call a nation. A plot of land we'll call this environment that now becomes a plot of land that they're placed on, that becomes their new nation, new landmass where we're put together. It could be a community. It could be in the high rise of the projects of Omaha, Nebraska. That becomes one nationality. It can become a plot of land where people of common thought come together. It could be a home. It could become a church. It could become that culture where people of common thought come together. Okay. And so it's the conqueror who now places you in a certain place. We see it in Israel. The battle is, the Palestinians said, this is my land, but yet it was the European, it was the English that defined, because they had become the conqueror. They now declare who owns, who possesses what landmass. Therefore, where these people of common thought should be. Are you hearing me yet? Yes. And so I want you to understand the role of a conqueror. The conqueror, if we begin to take a look at that, he establishes the nationality and the environment. The nationality environment defines the culture. What do you mean that nationality? The culture is how we have, let's go to the next slide so we can begin to look at that. The culture defines the art and other manifestations of human intellectual achievement regarded collectively. In other words, how we do things, the culture, how we roll, how we think in a like manner, how we behave. I'm looking to go to spend time with Doctor for a moment, Doctor, for some soul food. I'm always trying to think about how am I going to say this without sounding gluttonous. But Dr. Deborah can throw down. And so that is a culture that when we come to her nation, we sit down at a table and eat, that it has become a part of the culture. Yeah. And those of you who understand now that it's a people group that come together for a common agreement of what is good and not so good, right for our culture, bad for our culture. But take a look at who put us in this together to have formed this culture. Look at who started this thing. It was the conqueror. And so as we look upon here, we see that the culture is defined by ultimately the conqueror that allows us now to be together, to come up with common agreement of right, wrong, good, bad, what works for us. And the culture defines the thought of the people in this group. We have a common things of, hey, this is the way we roll. Some of you have experienced that in the home. Your mom and dad or your dad say, hey, if you're going to live in my house, you're going to have to be under my culture. My culture says you come home at 9 o'clock and, well, everybody, well, hey, this is our culture. And so he is the what? The conqueror. Because that is his what? That is his domain. He makes it very